Welcome back, folks, to WrestleRant. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and all February long, we're breaking down every installment of No Way Out as seen in the WWE Network. Today, we're talking about No Way Out 2002. Brief disclaimer here, I love the early 2000 installments of this pay-per-view. I talked about in my 2000 and 01 reviews that those No Way Out shows were really, really good. If you haven't already, check out those reviews and those shows. Of course, it's not like a movie. You don't need to watch those shows before watching this one, but still, those were great shows. This was a pretty good show as well. So kicking off the show I was going to say the Tag Team Turmoil match, but the actual opening of the show was the NWO making their WWE debut. Vince McMahon brought them in as a lethal dose of poison, lethal injection of poison into the WWF. As Ric Flair was his, the co-owner of Raw at that time, they were feuding. So that's why he brought them in. Hulk Hogan, Scott Hall, and Kevin Nash all come out to kick off the show. No Way Out, NWO, get it? I don't think that was really intentional. I just thought it was cool. But anyway, the segment was what it was. They came out trying to act like baby faces, apologizing to the crowd. Scott Hall goes, all right, I think Kevin Nash kicks off the promo. He goes, we're sorry. We didn't mean to destroy WCW or whatever it was. He just kind of came out acting like baby faces, not really kind of being overly sympathetic or overly apologetic or whatever. They just kind of come out saying they're sorry and whatever. So Kevin Nash talks, then Scott Hall takes the mic and goes, hey, yo. And classic Razor Ramon, the crowd goes nuts. So he kind of talks about it, about WWF and being brought in and doesn't appreciate being called a lethal injection of poison in the WWF. They're really not that bad, according to them. And then he calls themselves just a bunch of marks, which was both not really necessary and funny at the same time, not intentionally funny. It was just kind of like, why did they even bother saying that? But anyway. And then Hulk Hogan takes the mic and he says, you guys know me. I was here 10 years ago and I'm so happy to be back and, go USA or whatever. So, of course, this was setting up their various appearances throughout the night on the pay-per-view. They had two backstage segments throughout the evening. One with Stone Cold Steve Austin, the other one with The Rock. Both were great. The one with Stone Cold came first. I might as well mention them now, because I'll probably forget about them later, because we have the rest of the matches to talk about. So they had that backstage segment with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and they said, hey, Steve, we just got you a beer, and Stone Cold doesn't say anything. He just takes the beer in his hand, a whole six-pack of beer, tosses it behind him, doesn't even open it or anything. Completely just staring a hole right through the NWO. It was a great moment. He just goes, what? Doing the classic chant, which has become super annoying nowadays. But back then it was still, when Austin was doing it, it was funny. So that was that. That was pretty humorous. Then the one with Rock was even better, I thought. Rock, the NWO, they're hanging out backstage. They see the Rock, and Rock's like, whoa, geez, what are you guys doing here? And Hulk Hogan's like, hey, guys, can I just get a picture for my, hey, Rock, can I just get a picture for my son? I'd appreciate it, blah, blah, blah. And Rock's like, yeah, sure, for the Hogan son? Yeah, sure, of course. So he gets a picture with Hogan, and then NWO is walking away. I couldn't make out what they said, but they said something derogatory about The Rock. They like, oh, that picture is, it's not even worth it or whatever. I forgot what they said, and not even that I forgot. I couldn't hear what they said. I replayed it like two, three times. I couldn't hear what they said. They said it too softly. But then Rock goes, whoa, 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 whoa. It starts running down every member of the NWO. He goes to he goes to Kevin Nash. He goes, good old Diesel. And then he goes to Razor Ramon. It might have been the other way around, but he goes to Razor Ramon. Hey, Chico, how you doing, Chico? And then he goes to Hogan. And eat your vitamins, say your prayers, and turn it up your candy ass. Or, whatever the Rock's catchphrases are. I know I botched that, but it was super funny. I'm not doing it any justice by talking about it. It was super great. So check it out. It's probably one of the better parts of the pay-per-view. The NWO interactions with Stone Cold and Rock backstage. So the opening match was a tag team turmoil match to determine the number one contenders to the tag team titles, I believe at WrestleMania. The APA, Billy and Chuck, Christian and Lance Storm, Scotty 2 Hotty and Albert, and the Dudley Boys. Oh, and also the Hardy Boys. It was a good match. They got about 15, 16 minutes. Every team kind of held their own. Everyone, performed their roles well. Everyone, was fine in their roles, their respective roles throughout the match. It was a pretty decent match. Not one mini match in between the entire tag team turmoil. It really got a lot of time. It was just kind of there. But if anything, this tag team turmoil match really kind of showed how many great teams we still had back in 2002. I know, the Attitude Era was known for its great tag teams, and a little bit later on as well, but O2 had a lot of breakout teams as well. Like I just said, Scotty 2 Hotty and Albert, which I didn't even know was a team. Hip Hop Hippo, Albert. How many gimmicks has this guy had? Christian, Lance Storm, who were teaming on occasion at that time. The Hardy Boys, the Dudley Boys, you can't go really wrong with them. Billy and Chuck, I think, were tag team champions going into WrestleMania. And then APA won here for whatever reason. And I have no idea why. I mean, they were a team. They were a lot better, during the Attitude Era, and whatever else. They were just kind of not, they were over at this time, but they were just, their reign, their stint was kind of, not short-lived, but it kind of overstayed their welcome, I guess, by this point in time. They were still a good team. I was just kind of surprised that they won, considering that of all the teams in this match, they were the ones to end up in the tag team title match at WrestleMania. I think at WrestleMania 18, we ended up getting a Fatal 4-Way tag team title match with the Hardy Boys. Pretty sure the Dudley Boys, Billy and Chuck, and maybe APA too, I forgot. But I remember it just wasn't a standard tag team match at Mania, so this match didn't really mean anything in the long run. After that, we had Rob Van Dam taking on Goldust in a pretty good match. Goldust, I really don't think, I think he does by most fans, but I feel like he does not get the credit he deserves for being a very good worker. But I thought this was interesting because he came back to the company at Royal Rumble as like one of the first, I think he was like the second entrant, right? Or no. Maybe he was. I feel like he was like the second entrant in the Rumble with like Rikishi or something. I don't know. I watched it like a month ago. And he came back in the Rumble, had a great showing. I guess he came back for a full-time stint. I thought it was a one-off in the Rumble, but I guess he was back for like a full-time gig. Because I just don't remember him being at WrestleMania, so I thought he was gone after the Rumble, but I guess not. And they did this whole storyline with him that he had the secret admirer, and I guess that ended up being Rob Van Dam. So they had the match, RVD wins, but a pretty good match. Better than you think it would be, considering like two very different styles of wrestling between these two guys, but they meshed together pretty well. Had a good match, RVD wins, can't complain. After that, for the WWF Tag Team titles, Taz and Spike Dudley defending against Booker T and Test. Holy random tag teams, Batman. I don't know why any of these two tag teams existed, I guess. Taz and Spike, I have no idea what they had in common. I know they beat, God, I don't even know. I think they beat the Dudleys, didn't they, for the tag team titles on Raw or something? I couldn't even tell you, I forgot. But Booker T and Test were teaming at this time. Again, I have no idea why Booker T was in a match, I think against Edge at WrestleMania, wasn't he? So I don't know why they were why he was in a tag team at this point. And then Test was immune from being fired and everything else. It was just very confusing. But it was a decent match. Taz and Spike Dudley win. After Taz, I believe he forced Test to tap out to the Taz mission. That's a tongue twister. But the match was good. Fine match for what it was. Still tag team champions, Taz and Spike Dudley. After that, a brass knuckles on a pole match for the Intercontinental Championship. William Regal defending against Edge. In a better than expected match, they had a pretty good match at the Rumble that I enjoyed more than this one. I'm never really high on gimmick matches such as anything on a pole match, but at least it made sense within the storyline because remember at the Rumble, Regal used brass knucks to beat Edge for the Intercontinental Championship, so it made sense to the storyline, so I appreciated that. Other than that, it really wasn't that great of a match. They worked well together, but they didn't really have like amazing chemistry. Again, I thought the Rumble match was better. This wasn't bad at all. I thought it was good, and they made the most of the stipulation. So at least that, that was key in this match, and they kept the belt on Regal going into WrestleMania, which I thought, I love Regal as much as the next guy is my favorite wrestler of all time, obviously. But you would think they would have put the belt back on Edge or kept it on Edge going into WrestleMania, considering he had that match with Booker T over fucking shampoo or whatever it was, going into WrestleMania 18, and Regal had a match with RVD for the IC title, which RVD won, and I don't know why. That was a good match too, but I feel like Edge would have been the better choice as champion going into Mania, considering it was in Canada. He could have had a great title defense in WrestleMania. I think he won that match anyway with Booker T. I forgot, but that was that, and it was a good match, but they made the most of the stipulation, as I said. So after that, The Rock versus The Undertaker, and this was kind of stemming from The Undertaker's ongoing issues with Ric Flair. That led to the WrestleMania match. Ric Flair got involved here, as did Vince McMahon. So a pretty good match. I think it came a couple years too late. And I'm sure they had matches throughout the Attitude Era in like the early 2000s, the late 2000s, or rather, late 90s, early 2000s. But I can't remember like a real one-on-one feud between Rock and Taker. I know it's like a match that we hear about all the time nowadays. Like, we've never seen Rock and Taker WrestleMania. It's not that we've never seen it on pay-per-view at all, because we saw it on this pay-per-view. And it was a pretty good match. I don't think it really, lived up to what it could have been, considering the story really wasn't. You could have easily done this match in Mania, but then you wouldn't have gotten, Rock and Hogan. which was kind of like the classic of that show. But still, I thought, it was a good match, but it really wasn't what it could have been just because it was a backdrop for whatever was going on between Ric Flair and The Undertaker at that time that led to the WrestleMania match. And it was also kind of more about the feud between Flair and McMahon than it was about Rock and Taker. And the match was just kind of thrown together at the last minute to give both guys something to do going into Mania, or before Mania, before Taker moved into his feud with Ric Flair, and then Rock feud with Hogan. So for a filler feud, it was pretty good, a very good match, as best as you can expect from The Rock and The Undertaker, just to kind of lack that big fight feel, because it wasn't, it did feel like, not throwaway, but it was transitional before both guys moved on to bigger and better things going into WrestleMania. After that, a number one contenders match, or rather, no, it was for the Undisputed Championship. No, it was the number one contenders match. I'm sorry, I'm reading Wiki here, but I'm getting confused. The main event was for the title. This was the number one contenders match. Triple H won the Rumble, the 2002 Royal Rumble when he came back. Lastly, eliminated Kurt Angle to win the Rumble. And then Kurt Angle got another shot at the number one contendership at No Way Out, with Stephanie McMahon being the special guest referee. Long story short, Triple H and Stephanie had a falling out after Stephanie lied about being pregnant. Triple H found out that she lied. He wanted a divorce, whatever, so that set up this match at No Way Out. The real feud, of course, was between Triple H and Stephanie, not Triple H and Kurt Angle. Triple H and Kurt Angle had feuded, I think they might have had a match at the 01 Rumble. They had a couple matches in 99 and 2000, so they'd already kind of they'd already done the feud many times before this matchup. So really, not 99, I'm sorry, just 2000 and 01 before this. So they had already really done the match several times prior to this point. So it was a really good match. They worked very well together. Triple H and Kurt Angle have always had great chemistry. But again, it really didn't feel like a lot with Taker and Rock. The feud wasn't between Angle and Triple H. Angle was just kind of beneficiary of the whole thing and getting the title shot, or at least momentarily. He would lose the title shot back to Triple H, and then like the next night on Raw or later on or whatever, because of course it was Triple H going for the gold at WrestleMania 18, not Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle ended up in a match against fucking Kane or something. But yeah, it's still a very good match. Stephanie is the special guest referee. She played her role well, furthered her feud with Triple H very nicely. Kurt Angle surprisingly won. The crowd was like kind of sitting on their hands like, whoa, did he just win? I'm surprised. But again, it wouldn't be him going into WrestleMania, it would be Triple H, so it was short-lived, but still a very good match, and that kind of moved along the Stephanie-Triple H feud very nicely. And then we get to the main event, Chris Jericho defending the Undisputed Championship against Stone Cold Steve Austin. So Jericho, of course, was the one who beat Stone Cold to win the Undisputed Championship at Armageddon, or rather Vengeance, in December of 2001, a couple months prior. A very good match. Jericho was like the epitome of what a chicken shit heel was as champion at that time. I mean, I feel like they could have booked him better. He didn't win any matches clean, which is fine for a transitional heel, for a heel, but it really felt like his reign was transitional. It was just that, because at the Rumble, remember, he beat Rock by having his foot on the ropes with the tights and interference and banging his head on the ring post, like 4 or 5 different things it took to put Rock out, and they had to heavily protect the Rock, but it was more about making Jericho look weak, I think, more than anything else. And then in this match, they had a pretty good match up until the NWO Interference, who beat up Stone Cold and helped Jericho win the match and retain the title. That set up Hall and Austin for No Way Out, or rather WrestleMania. And then it would be Rock and Hogan. Now, if we got Austin and Hogan instead, who's to say that it wouldn't have been better or worse than Hogan and Rock at WrestleMania? That was magic right there, but maybe we would have gotten the same thing if it was Hogan and Austin. I don't think it really would have made that much of a difference. The actual match, I mean, I hate to get into like a WrestleMania 18 review, I've already done this, but if you want to check it out here on WrestleRant, but the actual match between Rock and Hogan wasn't like a 5-star classic. It was the environment, it was the electricity from the Canada crowd, and Hogan kind of showing shades of his Hulkamania character that really made that match special and really made it one of the most iconic matches in Mania history. Not the match itself. So Austin and Hogan, I don't know if they would have wrestled a better match. I still say the magic would have been there with Austin, even if it wasn't Rock. If it wasn't Rock in that role and it was Austin instead, I feel like the magic still would have been there. Again, we'll never know. But I thought it was interesting they attacked Austin at the main event of the show, which you would think would set up Hogan and Austin for WrestleMania, considering it was they attacked Austin later on. They had that brief altercation earlier on with Rock earlier on in the show. They didn't get involved in his match. That was Ric Flair and McMahon. So that would have been overload if they got involved in that match. But you would think it would have been Hogan and Austin, just because they attacked him at the main event of the pay-per-view, and not Hall and Austin, which was not good really at all. Hall wasn't in a good place at that time. Neither was Austin. The match really wasn't that good. They made the most of it. It was cool to see Razor Ramon against Stone Cold Steve Austin, but it wasn't what it could have been. Neither guy was in their prime by far. But anyway, Jericho and Austin was a pretty good match. That's pretty much what you could say for this whole show. Like a pretty decent show. Watching it back, I had more fun watching it than I did reviewing it, just because it felt like the matches, I'm not doing them any justice by talking about them, but I thought this show was, if anything, consistent. Like every match, there wasn't a bad match. They were all pretty good. Not one really great match. It's funny, all three main events, I mean, you look at the final three matches, that's a stacked fucking show. The Rock and Taker, Kurt Angle and Triple H, and then Jericho and Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's a stacked fucking show. And, I thought they made the most of it. It was good. And, of the card anyway, the undercard was pretty solid. The main events were very good. And, I thought it was a pretty decent show. Check it out. But, about the three main events, so as much star power as you had in those final three matches, like I said in every one of my, reviews of those matches, in that it really felt like what we had in each match wasn't the focal point, if that makes sense. For Rock and Taker, it was Taker and Ric Flair. For Angle and Triple H, it was Triple H and Stephanie. For Jericho and Austin, it was Austin and the NWO. You know what I mean? Like a lot of interference, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, in today's day and age, I probably would have shit all over it. But knowing where this went, I was kind of okay with it, because it set up many matches for WrestleMania, which is what these February shows should be all about. But still, a very good show. I would check it out. Pretty average, slightly above average show with some really solid matches, good wrestling overall. So that is my review of No Way Out 2002. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Your support is always appreciated. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And we'll be back on Tuesday with my full review of No Way Out 2003, which was even better. So until then, guys, be sure to follow me on Twitter at WrestleRant. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.Jason.Matthews. And be sure to, like I said earlier, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, folks. I'm Graham Jason Matthews, and I'll catch you folks down the road.